Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and we've got something slightly different for you tonight. Tonight I am joined by Steve from not only Sloan Newsday but Action4Assange, and what we're going to do is we're going to play the latest teach-in video. It's a little under 20 minutes long. It's a well-edited documentary style piece, and then we're going to discuss it and basically educate people on what's actually going on with Assange, and this is heavy on the Chelsea Manning leaks. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Thank you, Jason.
You got it, my brother. So would you like to set this up in any way?
So, yeah, I can just real quickly. This is our second video. We hope to have at least 4 or 5 done before the rendition hearing begins in September. The first one is just kind of a brief overview of who Julian Assange is, what charges he's facing, and basically what he had been doing up to the point to where to when he was sold for a $4.2 billion IMF loan and trafficked out of the Ecuadorian embassy into Belmarsh prison. This video does, like as you said, goes into exactly what he is being extradited over.
All right, so without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here we go.
The U.S. administration is in trying to erect a national regime of secrecy, a national regime of obfuscation, a regime where any government employee revealing sensitive information to a media organization can be sentenced to death, life imprisonment, or espionage, and journalists from the media organization with them.
Julian Assange created WikiLeaks to close the gap between whistleblowers coming forward and the public's ability to see the information they bravely provide. He is currently a political prisoner in the Guantanamo Bay of the United Kingdom, Belmarsh Prison, awaiting the second phase of his extradition hearing, which begins on September 7, 2020. All 18 of the charges against him relate to the material provided by a single whistleblower, Chelsea Manning.
The US State Department says it is bracing itself for the latest batch of classified information to be published by the whistleblowing website WikiLeaks. It's thought the leaked documents will include reports from officials in Washington and diplomatic posts around the world, and many fear those diplomatic cables will embarrass the US and its allies about the way they conduct international relations.
Chelsea Manning, soldier, network security expert, and analyst, became a whistleblower, torture victim, political prisoner, Maryland Senate candidate, and an activist as a result of her experiences in the U.S. military. Manning began communicating with WikiLeaks in 2009 after first contacting the Washington Post, the New York Times, and Politico. Self-described journalist Adrian Lamo reported Chelsea to the FBI on May 25, 2010. On May 27th, Manning was arrested outside Baghdad and spent over 75% of the following decade in federal or military custody. She is the only U.S. military whistleblower and journalistic source to be convicted of espionage.
No evidence was adduced of that. There was no claim of that. The only claim was that he was a whistleblower giving information to the public via a media organisation. It cannot be the case that when a journalist's source gives the information to the media for noble reasons that they are charged with espionage. There's no relationship with a foreign power. It is an attempt to set a precedent to shift how journalism is done in the United States to make the security services uncriticisable in practice.
On February 18, 2010, WikiLeaks posted a diplomatic cable from the U.S. ambassador to Iceland detailing the pressure campaign mounted by the United States in an attempt to influence Iceland's financial future. Though widely unreported, the release of the Reykjavik 13 cable resulted in the recalling of the U.S. ambassador and his subsequent firing. The remaining 251,286 diplomatic communiques, now known as Cablegate, dropped late that year, sending shockwaves through the halls of power and the U.S. media.
Would you ever consider not publishing something that was leaked to you?
Would I ever consider it? Of course, we've had many occasions to consider such matters in theory, sometimes in practice, but we don't, unlike every other media organisation on the planet, we don't operate ad hoc We have a policy, we have a public policy, and the public policy is that we promise to represent whistleblowers like a lawyer does in getting their material out to the public with just one provision, that the material is of diplomatic, political, ethical or historical significance and has not been published before or is under some kind of threat against publication. The Guardian would say their fear of libel suits even for information that is true. The Guardian removed 2/3 of an entire cable which had a list of Bulgarian organized crime figures in it. It removed the fact that mentioned in a Kazakhstani cable that E&I was corrupt. It removed that the Kazakhstani political class in general was corrupt. So let's be very, very careful to scrutinize every claim, every single claim that something should be held secret. The fundament of justice is that it's got to be open and it's got to be transparent. And the decision to censor something has encoded within it a secret process. Because if the process is not secret, the information is not censored. So that is the original sin of censorship. As a decision-making process, a quasi-judicial process, it is not a transparent process, it is a closed, secret court.
Following her arrest, Chelsea was transferred stateside, where she spent a year in solitary confinement on the U.S. Marine Corps base in Quantico, Virginia. Her treatment at the hands of her own government raised international concerns. In 2012, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Juan Mendez, labeled it cruel, inhumane, and degrading. She was transferred again to Leavenworth, Kansas to serve out a 35-year sentence after pleading guilty to 17 out of 22 charges. Her sentence was commuted by President Obama in January of 2017. She was offered a visiting fellowship at Harvard in September of 2017, which caused Harvard fellows with CIA ties and then CIA Director Mike Pompeo no small amount of outrage. Her fellowship was nearly immediately rescinded. She ran for Senate in Maryland in 2018 in a bid to oust Ben Cardin. She was free and living her life. Commutation, however, is not the same as a pardon.
While the Reykjavik 13 cable released earlier in the year garnered scant attention from the US press, the same cannot be said for the November 28, 2010 publication of what became known as Cablegate. The 251,287 document drop over the course of less than a year enraged the US government. Calls for Assange's imprisonment to murder rang out through DC, while the public and independent media poured over what was at the time the largest number of classified documents ever released. This led to Amazon refusing to host WikiLeaks' server and a rare show of corporate cooperation between the credit card companies and the United States government, as WikiLeaks suddenly found itself unable to accept donations. From May to July 2010, 91,731 documents were released containing field reports describing the brutality of US imperialism and adventurism in Afghanistan. They disclosed the cover-up of civilian killings, the death squad-like behavior of counterintelligence units, and other war crimes committed by US and coalition forces.
WikiLeaks has released more than 700 top-secret US military documents which provide intelligence assessments of nearly all those detained in the infamous Guantanamo prison. The files passed on to the New York Times and Britain's Guardian newspaper uncover years of manic intelligence gathering post 9/11, which resulted in the incarceration of innocent people on questionable evidence. In some cases, the ownership of a certain model of Casio watch, thought to have been given to Al-Qaeda students, was enough to get a one-way ticket to Gitmo. There are currently 172 individuals still held in the camp who are rated high risk by the Americans, despite President Obama's vow to consign the camp to history.
During this same time period, WikiLeaks released the Collateral Murder video, which showed a US Army Apache helicopter opening fire on civilians, killing more than a dozen people, including 2 employees of the news outlet Reuters, as well as the first responders, and critically wounding 2 children on their way to school. In February 2019, Chelsea Manning received a subpoena to testify in a secret grand jury against WikiLeaks and its founder Julian Assange. Objecting to the secret nature of grand juries and the use of them as political weapons, Chelsea Manning refused to comply. On March 8, 2019, after being found in contempt of court, she was placed in solitary confinement for 28 days and spent a total of 62 days before being released from federal custody.
More than 330,000 documents make up the Iraq War Diaries, which were released in full on October 22, 2010. Along with the Afghan war logs, the material shows the unmitigated disregard for the lives of Iraqi civilians on the part of coalition forces and led to international calls for investigations. It was the single largest reveal of military documents in history. The Guantanamo Bay files were released in late April of 2011. They detail accounts of cruel and inhuman treatment of prisoners labeled enemy combatants, ranging from 12 to 89 years of age, as well as a public relations manual for personnel to use when forced to speak around words like suicide and hunger strike. Several of these prisoners were guilty only of being political enemies to their home governments, including an Al Jazeera journalist from Pakistan. While running for president in 2008, then candidate Obama promised to close down the torture facility. Gitmo, however, remains open to this day. On May 9, 2020, after only 7 days of freedom, Chelsea was once again forced to appear before the grand jury to testify against WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. Just as before, Chelsea refused to comply with the grand jury. She was once again found in contempt of court and ordered back to jail. During this period of imprisonment, the court fined her $500 for each day over 30 days in jail and $1,000 for each day over 60 days thereafter. U.S. law states that as long as the judge believes more time and more fines will break the prisoner, that person will remain in jail. Manning made it abundantly clear she would never break and that she had nothing to add to her testimony from her court-martial in 2013. This is the only time in U.S. history a private citizen has been incarcerated and fined in such a way and led to yet another UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Niels Melzer, to label Manning's treatment as torturous. The 10-year-long grand jury into WikiLeaks and their founder Julian Assange was dismissed on March 12, 2020. Manning's testimony was no longer being compelled by legal demand, and she was finally released from custody. The fine she had incurred during her reincarceration totaled a staggering $256,000. Chelsea's close friend, Kelly Wright, launched a crowdfunding effort to help pay off the massive and draconian fines. This task was achieved in less than 48 hours. The Manning leaks have become a part of our history. Every single person who has read from them gained a more full picture of the American empire, the true cost of war, and the real price of being a whistleblower in the U.S. regime.
Action4Assange is a decentralized network of activists raising awareness about the ongoing torture and persecution of Julian Assange and the disintegration of free speech. To learn more about us, find us on social media or go to www.action4assange.com.
And guys, you can also support them financially on their latest effort to get people outside of the hearing out in September and also get out to D.C. One of the more powerful things about that piece to me is the fact that you really get to see it in retrospect, how we've treated other nations and how Guantanamo Bay has been used as a tool of torture against other human beings who, in the vast majority of cases, Steve, are 100% innocent. So how does that ring true of freedom and, you know, we're fighting for freedoms and we're fighting the terrorists, when even in the last couple of years there have been so many revelations about what Afghanistan was really about. And guess what? It wasn't about terrorism, was it, Steve?
Well, no. And Jason, here's the thing. I mean, we hear, even in the media circles that you and I run with, about how propagandized China is or North Korea is, or how, heavily heavily censored journalism is throughout the Middle East and again in China. And yet here we are, in 2020, where, as far as last number I saw, over 700 journalists had been shot at, tear gassed, and arrested just covering the George Floyd protests in the last 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
If we're the most heavily propagandized nation on the planet, my friend. we are, and I don't think that I don't think anybody can argue that when they look at something like our teachings, or when they look at something like the long history of the role that propaganda has played, not just in our media, but in our arts and entertainment, and certainly through the rhetoric of presidential candidates and elected officials.
Well, it's that full spectrum dominance when you talk about those avenues outside of the actual warfare, the psychological warfare that's been waged on not only the American public, but the global populace now for years has been tremendous, especially when we talk about the policies in Eurasia, especially now highlighting how censorship has not only become accepted, but it has been celebrated by certain major political sectors. There was a time where the quote-unquote left was behind the anti-war movement and behind WikiLeaks dumping information that exposed war crimes and supporting Julian Assange. And there began to be a huge shift post 2016 revelations, post DNC dump, where now you are hacking elections by releasing actual documents exposing corruption. You want to talk about that for a moment, Steve?
It's mind-boggling. Look, man, they just had a state funeral for John Lewis, right? Mm-hmm. And John Lewis is famous mostly for getting the shit kicked out of him by the cops during the civil rights era. What he proceeded to do after that was parlay the abuse that he had gone through into a congressional seat and then support the empire in every single possible way he could. So when the anti-war radicals from the 60s start to get up and preach about how protests shouldn't inconvenience people, or there's wild anarchists running around in the streets, or that members of the right should have their speech taken away through being deplatformed, it shows you that integrity is for sale. It shows you that a moral compass is way more flexible than we thought. And it shows you that people will turn on the truth in a heartbeat if it doesn't align with their particular partisan motives.
Well, another huge aspect of that is, why does he get a funeral? Oh, I get it. He's a political figure. But I'm sorry if your grandpa, your grandma, your wife, your aunt, your uncle didn't make the cut, and you still haven't been able to properly bury your loved one in the last 4.5, almost 5 months at this point, with no end in sight, with unelected billionaires such as Bill Gates doing a victory lap on every single network you can imagine right now, openly saying he expects us all to be locked down till 2022, that this vaccination will be at least a double shot, that it will not protect you from the virus most likely, but it'll protect you from being killed by the virus. Just unbelievable. And with trials where admittedly after the second dose, the Moreno trials, you basically got a fever and chills and every aspect of the virus 80% of the time. I mean, that's the bizarro world we live in.
It's got a 40% fail rate too, right? The Moreno one. So if 4 out of 10 people are getting negatively affected by taking this vaccine, the vaccine will in turn be more damaging than COVID itself.
Yeah.
Which has, a 0.02 to 0.04 kill rate on the people that actually give it a
0.1. Give it a 0.1. One out of 1,000. Give it a 0.1. Give it the flu and say it's 5 times as infectious. The bottom line is this, Steve. I'm sitting in an Applebee's yesterday, okay? And they're already hurrying up to close because everything closes early. New York State, you have to order food or you can't have a beer. Like, it's against the law. It's unbelievable. And we're sitting there, and they've got baseball on, and a few people are talking about it. And then the guy next to me starts talking about, I can't believe they're having basketball all in Florida with all the cases. And I turn to him and I go, hey, man, how many professional athletes have gone to the hospital because of this? I go, not died, not tested positive, but how many have been hospitalized in any sport? And his answer was 0. And I'm like, exactly. 0. There's been 0 professional athletes that have been hospitalized this. So why can't they have sports? It's 0. Okay? We're not talking about, oh my God, I'm going to you're not even going to the hospital. Do you get it? Like, we are in bizarro world where they're censoring doctors. For instance, again, this is why Assange matters. You censor this guy, you censor everybody. They've got a black woman talking about hydroxychloroquine and that she's treated 350 patients. All successful. Yeah. Now, I want to know, the only thing I want to know, is she a liar or not? Not does she believe in demon semen? Not does she think the lizard people run the show? I want to know if she has treated these 350 people. And if not, if you can prove that she has not, I am not only willing to look at it, I will put it out there. But instead, I see all these memes. I see now the left making fun of a doctor who is a black woman who's made it from another country, who you would think by all their supposed virtue signaling they would be propping up. But no, it's not about medicine. It's not about truth. It's not about accountability. It's about complete and total authoritarianism and really global control over not only the United States, but much more. When you've got Bill Gates up there, giddy as a schoolgirl for a half an hour, sitting there, talking about 7 billion doses of this thing, Steve, we are in bizarro world.
Doesn't it make your gut just fucking twist up when you see that smirk that Bill Gates wears? And this is fairly simple for most people to understand, I think, I hope. The Democrats want diversity for optics' sake. They don't want diversity of opinion. Diversity of opinion is verboten when it comes to, the party of the people. She does. That doctor wins identity politics bingo. She not only does she win identity politics bingo, she is the success story that both parties hold up to, like, this is why the American dream is real. This is why we're the greatest country in the world. You can come from anywhere else and you can succeed here. And I believe she said that she had gotten her medical school, her medical training in Africa, and yet was able to become employed in the United States, I'm sure as a diversity hire in the first place. So the hospital could go, look at the good that we're doing. Oh, and by the way, no, we won't answer any questions to reporters about whether or not she actually treated 350 people. Because that was the only question I had too. Because I saw the fucking, she believes in Damon's sperm. And I'm like, well, don't you? I mean, like, at the core of your being, you probably do. You probably do. But regardless, is she an effective doctor? Does hydrochloroquine and zinc and zithromax effectively treat this disease, this virus? If the answer is yes, I don't care, Jason, if she fucking, if she thinks Henry Kissinger is a swell guy.
That's right.
I don't care if she's a Detroit Red Wings fan. I don't. That doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the treatment effective? And if the treatment is effective, why isn't it being fucking implemented?
Exactly. Why are we still locked down? Listen, it's only gotten more maddening where I am in upstate New York. The task forces are out. The State Liquor Authority has now teamed up with the state troopers, and they did hit one of the bars that's associated with me. Basically, there were 3 of the Red Jug Pub, and they got the one in Cortland. for breaking rules. They're eventually going to be coming here. And that's not even the worst of it, because now Cuomo has announced just recently that his contact tracers are going to be expanding not only for COVID 1984, but the flu as well.
Yeah, because that's what we need, Jason, is more surveillance, more of the track trace databasing that you've been talking about for like almost fucking 20 years now. Where I go to a biker bar for my lunch break like half the time, since I've been on this never-ending fucking hell job site, and there's a sign up, multiple signs up at the biker bar, no mingling. No mingling. If you get up from your seat, you're supposed to put on a mask. Nobody can go inside unless they're going to the bathroom. Everybody has to sit outdoors, and you can have your mask off outdoors at your table, but you cannot mingle. There's even a stick figure sign of two people hugging with a circle and a slash through it. I'm not fucking kidding you, man. I'll take a picture tomorrow and send it to you just so you can get a goddamn kick out of it.
Yeah, I wish it was funny, but this is reality. They're telling us to wear goggles now. It's fucking 98 fucking degrees, and I've got fucking a little fucking elf demon named fucking Mr. Faucian talking about goggles at this point. Who are these people? Like, I think you don't want me shaking hands. You don't want me in a bar having a beer talking to somebody. You don't want me hugging my neighbor. You don't want me ever shaking anybody's hand ever again. But you're going to sit next to some guy with your mask off after you threw a fucking baseball 5 feet wide. Like, can you imagine if there were actually people in the stands? Even before he got out, he would have been booed down. Instead, we're playing Dystopia 2020, and there are people that are like, oh, aren't those cutouts cute? They got their faces, the fans, right on them. I mean, this shit is wild, and it's only getting wilder, and we're hitting that apex. I got to ask you, what do you think about, number one, Trump signing this executive order about Big Pharma, and almost everybody on the left, in fact, Chuck Grassley's the only person that I even saw comment on it and actually say, wow, good job, Trump. Where the left just has acted like it hasn't happened. And two, what do? Freak out about? Where he says he may suspend the election. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Suspension of election is concerning.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is shit that we were talking about back in January. Like, I get a buddy who's an activist out in Portland. His name's Jeff Black. He's intense as shit. But he came on my show right after we got back from DC, and he was like, "That's it. Trump's not resigning. They're gonna cancel the elections. I guarantee you, it's never going to be anything remotely close to what it was just a couple of months ago. This is fucking insane." And I gotta admit, man, I was a little hesitant to like co-sign that. Mm-hmm. You know, like, oh, I don't think he's really gonna suspend the election, and he might. And look, it's a great thing that an executive order was signed to help lower prescription drug prices during what is supposed to be a global pandemic. It would be a little bit better if we had healthcare like the rest of the industrialized world has healthcare. And if you wanted to buy into a better plan, you could. But if you want to be treated because you're sick, you can, and it doesn't bankrupt you. Like, it sounds a little bit better to me. He sounded better to Trump when he was a candidate, and he started talking about how good Scotland's healthcare was. You know, I remember that interview. He said he would have the most beautiful healthcare system the world has ever seen.
He's on.
I'm not
again. No, you don't have to. Listen, I'm not. By the way, I did a whole video on it. I'm not endorsing him postponing the election. I think that's a horrible idea. I think that gives everybody what they want. Say he's a dictator. Look, but at the same time, everything else in that tweet, except for the last line, I was 100% down with. That we can't just have mail-in voting. That's not absentee ballot voting. We do have to find a. Listen, man. Again, if you go to Walmart, you can go to a ballot box. Period. I don't understand what's going on here. It's not hard. And
if you can go to a drive-up mailbox, they can have polling stations like that for the entire fucking country.
I mean,
where you
that's
drive
even
up.
over the top to me. You don't have to do that.
Sure, it is, but I mean, if it's gonna be a fucking cartoon, let's take it to an absurd end, but one that actually, like, you know, fulfills the requirement of going through the charade that elections are a thing that aren't already predetermined months, if not years in advance, and like let people drive up and you know, get handed their ballot, and they do their ID thing, and then they fill out their ballot and they hand it to the person in a full fucking hazmat suit. All right, like full on hazmat suit with the big red, white, and blue sash across it. You know, for the freedom that of course drive up voting to a person in a hazmat suit would ensure.
Oh, Steve, it's hard to know where to go with all this. You know, at the other end of the spectrum, I guess we should talk about Joey B for a second. And, you know, they let him loose for less than 30 seconds. He literally trots out there to take the man. They're like, all right, Joe, listen, you got the mask on. You step to the podium. You take the mask off. You don't say anything that's not on the teleprompter. Look immediately at the teleprompter. Listen to us, Joe. You need to do this. And he messes up. He takes it off. And he starts talking about where he is. And then he realizes he's not where he says he was. Whatever. And he'll just laugh it off. Like, can you imagine? I mean, that's 2020 in a nutshell to me. Like, they're so arrogant that they rolled out the guy that, again, did not know where he was. Forget about didn't know the issue. He didn't know where he was.
Now, I am not a statesman by any stretch of the imagination, nor am I an elected official, but I'm going to go ahead and guess that knowing what room you're in is marginally important to the whole leader of the free world process.
You know what? I think you're maybe reaching on that one.
I could be. I could be reaching.
Listen, his vice presidential candidate will be ready to be president on day one. He's already told us. I mean, again, I don't know, man. Again, we've got to be close to the 100-day mark at this point, and he still hasn't chosen a vice presidential candidate. There's really, looks like there's no hope of an actual even online debate, no matter what is being said at this point. We are, I don't know what to say. I know I need to get the fuck out of New York. Like, that's the next big thing. Try to protect my ass there and get into the Midwest. Actually, I was talking to, you know what? It was funny because, lo and behold, Pat Miletich, off air, we were discussing the elections, and he's just like, I don't think there's going to be an election, Jason. I think he's really going to not allow an election. And I go, really? Because, you know, Pat's kind of a right-leaning guy. And he's like, yeah, no, I think he's going to call it a national lockdown, and we're not going to have an election. And we're going to have martial law in this country. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, Pat. And then as soon as this happened today, Miletich retweeted it, and I was tweeting to him, being like, I immediately thought of you when I saw this tweet, and then he called me. So, yeah, so hopefully Pat's going to be on tomorrow.
So I told you, right? I remember like a week ago when I told you this exact thing would happen.
It's like, yeah, basically, yeah. So, I don't know, man. Here we are, and Julian Assange is at the apex of the issue because on the other side of it, I'm seeing all these things that Bill Barr is a hero. You know, and Bill Barr's, but on the other side of that, I watch these children talk to him about non-issues, and you almost feel bad for the guy. Like, you're feeling bad for a lifelong CIA operative as he's being berated by establishment morons. Again, 2020 in a nutshell. Have you caught some of this stuff?
One more time?
Did you catch any of the Bill Barr hearings?
I wound up seeing a little bit of it after the fact, and I shouldn't be surprised by this shit anymore. But, you know, so you get busy and you kind of forget just how craven, corrupt, and utterly fucking dumb as a bag of hammers like 90% of Congress is, and that's being generous. It is. And while I didn't feel bad for Billy Barr, like, I felt bad for everyone who had to sit there, like all of the aides that are in the room with them, whoever has to run the camera, whatever people are in the gallery there, like, you got to feel bad for them because they came for a show, right? This was supposed to be a face-off or a showdown, you know, and what it was basically like two mules fighting over a turnip. It was that was about the effectiveness.
Well, I mean, Jerry Nadler looks like a fucking villain out of a Tim Burton movie up there with his fucking mask down. He's berating other people that refuse to wear it, and God bless them for refusing to wear it. But I mean, serious. Again, it's like I don't want to root team baseball. I'm so against team baseball. I've always been against team baseball, and here they're putting me into a position where I know the guy who's currently actively covering up and joking about covering up the Epstein case is in the right in this case.
Yeah. That's how fucking. I mean, that really is just it perfectly encapsulates just how fucked up the predator class is, because they'll pit themselves against each other for show, and they make you feel good or bad about one or the other of them, because that's human nature. You know, like, you tend to take a side most of the time anyway, and a lot of us like rooting for an underdog. They made one of the most powerful men in the country, if not the planet, look like an underdog.
That they did, but the true underdog right now, folks, is Julian Assange, and we got to do everything we can to bring this case to the forefront. Remember, not only do we have this illegal extradition, but we have counterintelligence measures 2020 to 2022, which just is using this as a baseline model. Remember, leaktivists, hacktivists, public disclosure organizations, that's everybody. So, Steve, tell people how they can financially support you guys so you guys can continue to do your great work.
We have a GoFundMe up. There's a direct link to it on the website. You can also find it at Action_4Assange on Twitter, or on my Twitter account at Slow News Day Show. It's my pinned tweet. We are trying to be in DC for all 3 weeks of this show trial and rendition hearing. We got lectured by a French activist and writer and anarchist named Victor Dédage, who told us not to use the language of empire when we're talking about this. So it's, and the fact that Julian Assange is an Australian citizen who's being held in London to be extradited to the United States cancels out the fact that it's an extradition. It's a broad daylight fucking kidnapping in the middle of a courtroom. It is an extraordinary rendition, because when they, all but throw the black bag over his head, he's going to a supermax prison under special administrative measures, which is torture that extends not just to the prisoner, but to the prisoner's legal team and family and visitors. Action4Assange has done a few shows on special administrative measures. It's worth letting your audience know what they are, because there are other prisoners of conscience in the U.S. who are being subjected to these. It is like disgusting, and right out of the Spanish Inquisition.
It's very true, and people have to understand that the corruption within the system is that great. We already showed you what they do in foreign countries via Gitmo, Abu Ghraib, other black sites, but the truth of the matter here is that you have a system where we talked about a massive pedophile ring, where the most obscene things were happening in Ohio. Generationally, we had videotapes, we had incest, we had the abuse of children from 3 to 13. Those women who sold their children basically into sex slavery on film, each were under $100,000 bond. Instead, a man who has exposed human trafficking and torture is now going to be treated not only like a criminal, but tortured along the way, despite being innocent of all trumped up charges. Steve, Slow News Day, great show. What's coming up there?
I will be sitting down very soon with Vanessa Beeley, who is a UK journalist who's been living in Syria for a number of years. She's one of the very few people that actually tell the truth about the U.S. military's involvement in Syria. Spiro will be on, I think, week after next. And yeah, I mean, I've had to slow down on my show a little bit because my work schedule picked up. We're still doing two free Assange vigils a week, Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern. Italian journalist and just legend and badass Stefania Maruzzi will be on this Saturday. Her work alone on the process of freedom of information requests in Europe, she should be a household name to everybody watching this show. She's a fucking legend. So I'm looking forward to that. The following Tuesday, Danny Shorson and Kevin Gistola will be on. We've got good things coming up, man. We do.
All right, awesome, man. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for providing that video. And remember, there's a third and fourth teach-in on the way.
Yeah. We the original idea was to do as many as we possibly could, and we kind of had to scale back on that a little bit. We're in the middle of doing one on WikiLeaks' connection to the Russiagate myth. So we're going to blow massive holes in that conspiracy theory that is Russiagate. And we're going to be sitting down with a couple of the members of Doctors for Assange, just so people can have an idea of the extreme psychological torture that Julian has been subjected to and will be subjected to if he is renditioned to the U.S.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve. We'll see you on the flip side, my friend.
Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And remember, folks, I am fully demonetized on this platform. $5, $10, $15. It means the world to me. It's how we keep up here. After all, I've been deemed harmful content. We just shared so much harmful information with you, us pesky truth tellers. Please, folks, if you want to see Joey B forget where he was yesterday, you can go check that, the Is Trump Really Doing It video. And if you want to learn about what these trials are going to entail or how giddy Bill Gates is about these human trials and what's been going on in the world, please go check out those two latest videos. Remember, I am a documentary filmmaker. Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture are two of my best on globalization. They're right here, right now, for free in the documentaries playlist section, along with my 9/11 films, Fabled Enemies, and Loose Change Final Cut. You can also support myself and Steve over at Rockfin, an alternative platform that has yet to censor me or call anything I've done harmful content. So props to those guys. I absolutely love you. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you all on the flip.